More current and former Trump administration's officials are revealing their true feelings. One problem, they're waiting until they're out of the Oval Office and out there trying to sell their own books. The latest example, former ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, who is selling a book and making the media rounds, talking about how privately she stood up to the president behind closed doors. However, she stays far, far away from criticizing him.
Any question about his truthfulness, his ability to tell the truth?
Savannah, I talked to him multiple times, and when I had issues, he always heard me out. I never had any concern on whether he could handle the job, ever.
What about his truthfulness? Did you think he was a truthful person?
Yes. In every instance that I dealt with him, he was truthful, he listened, and he was great to work with.
This comes as former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who has just signed a book deal himself, and President Trump's acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, are at odds over testifying in the House impeachment inquiry. The clash was on full display when the lawyer for Bolton and his deputy, Charles Kupperman, went to court arguing that Mulvaney has, quote, aligned himself fully and completely with the president and should not be allowed to join the lawsuit already filed. Mulvaney then withdrew his effort to join the lawsuit and suggests he's going to pursue his own. Joining me now, New York Times chief White House correspondent Peter Baker. Peter, let's start right there. Bolton. We've been saying for days that Bolton is a wild card. He left the White House on bad terms with the president, but he's a lifetime Republican. We don't know what he'll say. Now that we know he doesn't want Mick Mulvaney in his same lawsuit, saying, nope, he's on Trump's team, what does that tell you about what Bolton has to say?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting and very revealing. These are two men who actually were clashing while they were still in the White House, just feet away from each other, one in the southwest corner office, the other in the northwest corner office, and they were going head to head. This Ukraine thing really brought it to a climax because Mick Mulvaney was facilitating the president's efforts to pressure Ukraine to provide incriminating information about Democrats, and John Bolton thought the shadow foreign policy was out of bounds and unwise, and in fact he called it a drug deal that Mulvaney was in fact part of. So this is now spilled over into Bolton's post-presidential life in the form of this lawsuit, in the form of them saying, I don't want to be part of that. Bolton saying, I don't want him to be part of my lawsuit. We're on different sides, in effect, of this whole Ukraine issue. Now, it doesn't mean that if he testified, he would necessarily, testify to things that would be bad for the president. We assume that he will testify that he opposed what was going on, but we don't know for a fact exactly what he would say. The people around him have made clear that the testimony we've seen so far about his views of it is accurate, that he did, resist this pressure on Ukraine. He did think this was unwise. He thought Giuliani was a hand grenade, as he put it, to one aide. But we don't know necessarily how that testimony would play out if and when he were actually to sit down and talk to House investigators.
Then, knowing John Bolton how you do, is his argument really more about how he sees foreign policy versus the president, a transactional guy who looks at countries like one deal after another, whereas Bolton believes successful foreign policy is about consistency and persistence?
Yeah, John Bolton, he's not the most popular guy on some parts of Washington, particularly on the left, but he's a very consistent, principled conservative who's had very strong views throughout multiple administrations. Even if it meant he was going against the prevailing winds within his own party, he would speak out and give his point of view. So I think that the one thing that makes him an interesting possible witness is he's not likely to sugarcoat his points of view if he does testify. He's going to tell you what he thinks. Now, he is a lifelong Republican, as you point out. He doesn't have any interest in damaging the party. He doesn't have any interest in damaging his own future in the party. At some point, he has talked about running for president himself. He's already, since leaving the White House, reconstituted his political action committee and picked 5 members of Congress he's planning to raise money for. So he wants a future in the Republican Party. I think that's one reason why you see him going to court saying, wait, should I testify or not testify? I'm not taking sides. The president's told me not to. Congress told me I have to. Let's let the court decide. If he ends up testifying because the court told him to, it's easier for him to say to the Republican Party in the future, look, I didn't want this. It was forced upon me, and I had to tell the truth.
Nikki Haley, who is her book and her media tour the most damaging to? She speaks out against Rex Tillerson and John Kelly. But at the end of the day, you saw that clip where she was speaking to Savannah Guthrie and being very careful and artful, dodging the question about the president being honest. Is the person she's damaging the most Mike Pence, i.e. possibly eyeing his seat?
Yeah, that's certainly the speculation right now, obviously. She left on good terms with the president a year ago, one of the few people who has left on her own terms. And people were actually really impressed with how she had done it. She seemed to still have an independent image, not seen as, too Trumpy, if you will, but also loyal to Trump. And she managed that very careful
those remarks pretty
balancing act.
But wouldn't you say she was pretty Trumpy this morning?
Well, that's what I'm saying is now, a year later, she's really thrown herself into one side of the divide within the Republican Party. She's definitely subscribing herself to the Trump side, and she's saying basically, in effect, she thinks he's going to stick around, and she might want to be part of his ticket. And if she's not part of his ticket this time, she might want to succeed him next time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.